everybody, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am your host, Taylor Rockwell. With me on the other end of the line, I've got a man who would never dive, but if he did, he would certainly sell it really, really well. It's Ryan Bailey. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, Tay-Tay. I'm selling dives metaphorically every single week when I'm on this show, I feel like, to be honest.
There we go. I like it, and I appreciate it, and I feel the same. So there you go. Yes, as I'm alluding to, we're going to get to Liverpool and Chelsea, Liverpool's dramatic win over Chelsea, and some of the kind of controversy, quote-unquote controversy, I'm going to say. And I am going to start this off, though, Ryan. It felt like there was a strange amount of controversy this weekend, from genuine controversy down to, like, is that really that big of a deal? So I am going to be keeping track and asking you to sort of rank your controversies as we go through this show. I'll keep the order down, and you can kind of adjust it as you need to. But
what kind of, like a 1 to 10 scale? We're going to have a controversometer of some sort?
I think we're going to have a controversometer of what was the most controversial, what was the most, like, insane moment from the weekend, down to, like, what was the thing that was maybe a little bit overblown. Because there's some stuff on Reddit that I saw comments about that was, like, equating a small incident to, like, the most disgraceful act I've ever seen. And then there were other incidents that were probably pretty disgraceful. So I want to see where you kind of land in the order. But first, I start with...
Obviously, the most controversial thing that's happened in the whole weekend was them killing off Tyrion in the first episode of Game of Thrones. I can't believe they did that. Anything from there is just way below, but go on.
That was a good one. We did like a full 5-minute conversation about Game of Thrones before we started recording. I think we could probably do as long of a conversation as we're about to do about the weekend soccer about Game of Thrones. I'm pretty sure, based on that little conversation we just had.
Much longer, actually.
Yeah, that makes sense. But we will not do that, because if we even, like in the past, if past is precedent, if we even vaguely mention a detail, people will be very upset. So we will leave that and instead move to the maybe possible eventual Kings in the North. Man City's 3-1 win over Crystal Palace, away to Crystal Palace. And I want to start off with a sort of downer note by asking you, Ryan Bailey. I was watching this game, I was enjoying Man City, and then every now and then the ball would go to a certain individual and he would shoot wide or be dispossessed or just look like he didn't quite know what he was doing. And it led me to wonder in the show notes, what has happened to Christian Benteke?
Poor old Christian Benteke, yeah. Not scored in his last 19 appearances. I think it's his first start in a few games as well. It's a weird story, isn't it? It's sort of a player who was absolutely on fire when he was at Villa, earned that big move as well. Didn't quite fit into Klopp's system. And actually started pretty well at Palace, didn't he? Mm-hmm. But I don't understand what happens to players like this. Is it a loss of confidence? It's not for want of being not fitting in Palace's system, and he's getting the ball at his feet. Just not burying it. It's weird, isn't it?
It is, because I think like the move to Liverpool makes sense, and maybe if Brendan Rodgers stays there, things work out. But he doesn't fit with Klopp. It's one of the few players I was reading that Klopp has like publicly criticized in his tenure. So he gets moved on. So I guess all of that makes sense. Then he has the first season at Crystal Palace, and that's where the kind of head scratching begins. Because even around then, there was still, at least in my mind, some debate about like, is it Benteke? Is it Lukaku for Belgium? Maybe that was like a little bit like closer to when he was with Villa. But now here we are, and that seems like an even laughable conversation. And all I can figure is that it's maybe like the ruthlessness of the Premier League, that if you start to underperform or misperform, and maybe other players are there like Wolf Zaha who can sort of step into that role and maybe require a shape change to do so. If you're Roy Hodgson, maybe you just think like, yeah, you don't quite fit with the system anymore, so we'll use you where we can.
I don't know. Yeah, it's very odd. And maybe it's confidence. Maybe it's just that some players shine at certain points and don't in others. Maybe if you can compare it to a band who have a really good first and second album, then they just fall way off. Let's call them Weezer, where they have really good first few albums, and now you're just like, what are you guys putting out? What is this nonsense? Maybe that's the Benteke framework we should be using here.
So if Benteke starts doing like random covers of Toto songs, we should know that things have gone awry. All right, that makes sense.
Exactly that.
That makes sense to me. Then let's switch it around to talk about Man City for a moment, because once again, I feel like there are certain players that we keep talking about on the show, you and I don't think it's just because we have any particular love or loyalty towards them, or at least I don't when it comes to Raheem Sterling. But I do want to talk about him because he has the early kind of point-blank miss in this game, and I'm inclined to say that in seasons past that would have weighed on him, or it would have been sort of, you would have seen it more in his like performance as the game went on. Maybe he misses another chance, or maybe there's a little bit of frustration, and instead he gets a brace, and has a very solid game overall. And I'm wondering, like, where are you on Raheem Sterling in regards to his development? Like, do you think that is a difference in his game this year, that he's able to shake things off a bit more? Or is that something that you think we've seen from him in seasons past, and I'm maybe just not a Man City fan, so haven't noticed it?
I think that's exactly it. I think that's the story of his season. Something that should have thrown him off doesn't, and makes him stronger. And we've seen that off the field and on the field. That early miss being a case in point, and he comes back to score a couple and nearly score a few more. I think he's just. I'll be pretty dismayed if he doesn't get Player of the Year. And I think even if City don't win the league, I mean, he's got competition from obviously Virgil van Dijk, who's making Liverpool's defence not laughable anymore. Eden Hazard, I'd say, is a strong candidate. Maybe you put Heung-min Son in there as well, but just Sterling, he's just jumped up another level this season, hasn't he? And he was a pretty high level last season too. Involved in 26 goals. I think he's got 17 on the season and 9 assists now. And to be a star shining this brightly in a team like City, it's wonderful, isn't it?
It is, unless you're a Manchester United fan, as I am, in which case it's less so. But it is wonderful, and it's also, given the way this title chase is going, this title challenge is going, it does feel like both these teams are going to continue to have success for the rest of the season. We can talk more about what we expect from them as the rest of the season plays out. But I was watching them, and then I was watching Liverpool, and there's an element to me of, like, if you want to go with a boxing analogy, and I'm just talking about, like, in their prime, in the ring, none of the other stuff associated. But I'm going to make the argument that, like, Man City are Floyd Mayweather and Liverpool are Mike Tyson. That it's like Man City can just kind of like probe and wait, and they'll sit back and they'll kind of frustrate, and then they'll take their opportunity if they need to, and if they don't need to in that moment, then they'll sit off a little bit more. And I just don't get that like level of like viciousness from them that you get from Liverpool with their kind of ruthlessness in their attack. But it is what makes Man City so special, is that then they can kind of sit off and maybe miss a few chances, and it seems like things aren't going their way, and then suddenly it's just this like inch perfect pass, this great run from Sterling, and suddenly they're 1-0 ahead. Yeah,
and I think this game was so important for Manchester City. To me, this is the game that tells me they're going to probably win the league this season. Because going into this one, I thought this was going to be their biggest test. Palace, obviously, they hadn't beaten them in the last few times they played. They got beaten by them earlier in the season. And last season, I think you remember, at Selhurst Park, they very nearly lost. I think Ederson saved a last-minute injury time penalty, and it was finished 0-0, and that ended their hilariously long winning streak that they were on at the time. So this to me was just the way they came out of the traps in the first 20-25 minutes. And I liked the way Barney Renaud described it in The Guardian: effortless superiority. They would not in the least scared by facing Crystal Palace, a team who've been their bogey team in the past few efforts. By half-time, they'd had 78% possession, made 334 accurate passes. Palace had made 71. They were just completely dominant from the start. And we've seen this, obviously, in recent performances from City, barring the Champions League outing last week. But I just think, to me, this shows that this team has the mettle to go all the way. They are just... There's no psychological effects of negativity on this team at the moment at all.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would say that Match of the Day did a great job of kind of pointing out a few players and what they brought to the table in this game. Raheem Sterling and his vision and his movement, and Kevin De Bruyne and his kind of work rate and how that's improved. But also pointing out that these are all things, or with a lot of these players, these are things that they didn't necessarily have when they moved to City. They didn't necessarily have even last season. That like Kevin De Bruyne working back defensively, winning balls, and then helping to kickstart counterattacks, and Raheem Sterling kind of staying focused throughout the game and staying locked in even after missing a chance, and even just some of the like Leroy Sané kind of buying into the system and functioning within it, and it all feels like a team that are definitely coming together and clicking at the exact time that they need to, especially given how they're not really being given any slack by Liverpool.
Yeah, and just the style of play has been wonderful as well. And I mean, the Brighton game they didn't have fantastic style. Obviously, didn't do themselves too proud in the Tottenham game either. But like watching the second goal, the way the ball was on the left channel, like 3 really tight passes, got it switched to the right channel. Walker surges up, gets the ball into Aguero in the box. Sané passing across the box to Sterling for that simple one-touch finish, which is a brilliant finish, by the way. But Sané made that pass through 7 Palace players in the box. Inch perfect pass coming in there, and just the way that the ball was zigzagged basically across the field twice to get that ball into the net. It's just so fun to watch, isn't it?
They certainly are, as are Liverpool. I would say I'm with you that I think Raheem Sterling will be the player of the year if City win the league. I'm inclined to say that if they don't, I think it goes to Virgil van Dijk if Liverpool win it. And I do think that Son is a good shout, but I think with the seasons that Liverpool and City are having, I think it would be tough for him to end up edging out either of those two. And same goes for Eden Hazard at Chelsea, who we can talk about right now, actually, because we should also probably get to Liverpool's 2-0 win over Chelsea. Now, in your sort of preview of the weekend, I think you also had this as a game where Liverpool could potentially slip up.
Yeah, it was my mirroring previous events, sort of a timeline I went with there. Bit Game of Thrones-esque of me, I might say. I thought that this would be the moment when Liverpool showed that they don't have the mettle that City had shown they had earlier in the day. Obviously, I was quite wrong. I would say, though, in Chelsea's defence, they were really good. I thought they had the better first half. Obviously, the issue being, well, maybe not the issue, but potentially, well, I suppose it is an issue. They've got a striker problem, haven't they? They start with Eden Hazard in that false nine role in the middle. They got two strikers on the bench, including one they spent a decent amount of money on. That's a major issue. Is like Higuain coming in, but still not or coming into this game as a substitute, but not coming in the way I think Chelsea fans would have expected as the savior that kind of turns things around. And I think that's exactly what Maurizio Sarri was expecting. But then I also think this game defensively was good from Chelsea, but it also again showed the vulnerability of Sarri's system in that. When Chelsea would start to maybe get a little bit of more possession or try to move the ball forward, I kept seeing Firmino just kind of drop in and sit on Jorginho, and that negated a lot of their passing options, and it really kind of frustrated Chelsea's ability to get forward. Granted, they could have had some chances. Eden Hazard probably could have made this 2-2 if he had his shooting boots on, and maybe we're just more of a polished center forward. No shots fired at Eden Hazard because he is very, very good. But it was still the sort of this isn't really going to work for Chelsea, and it probably is inevitably going to work for Liverpool. And that's kind of how it played out, especially with the first goal. It felt just sort of like Liverpool refusing to give up and eventually finding a way to score. Yeah, I think that was exactly how it played out. It was a really, really good performance from Liverpool. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold had a great game. I think that you just saw how I'm actually writing a piece this week about the importance of fullbacks in the modern game. And I think this is a good example of it. We got Robinson on one flank and Alexander-Arnold on the other, just absolutely bossing it. And, that was where the most space was being created. And I thought this was not the Liverpool I thought would show up, basically, and I was very impressed with them. And Jordan Henderson as well had a wonderful game too.
I would agree with that, and I would agree with your first statement as well. That this was the first half. Liverpool was maybe what I thought we might see, which was a little bit cautious, a little bit nervous, having played midweek and then having another game coming up midweek, and just kind of aware of the pressure. And there's kind of the past incidents of the slip with Steven Gerrard. I did wonder if they'd be a little bit nervous, and that is how they looked to me in the first half. And to your point about the attacking fullbacks and the aggressiveness in the fullbacks in the second half, you really saw it a lot more. As evidenced by even that first goal, there's just so many bodies forward that even before Mohamed Salah puts Emerson under pressure, even before Liverpool start combining and the cross goes in, there's already a numerical mismatch that Liverpool have committed so many bodies in there that Chelsea are kind of scrambling. And I think in the end, I can't remember, I think it's Cesar Azpilicueta ends up marking two different people at the back post, and one of them is Sadio Mane, who isn't actually marked, but it's because Liverpool have just committed so many bodies in there. I think it was much more of the kind of heavy metal football that we've come to expect from Liverpool, and that's where my kind of Mike Tyson analogy came from, was the idea that just eventually they're just going to bludgeon their way through and get the result.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's obviously not the first time we've seen that this season, or indeed in the past few weeks. And you say Azpilicueta marking at the back post. That's not what I saw him doing. I saw Navigator and Sadio Mane pretty much on their lonesome at the back post for that first goal.
Yeah, I should say marking in air quotes is probably a better way to do that.
Yeah. Maybe he was thinking about marking in somewhere in his mind. But the fullback thing was great. I think the only downside of them committing so many men up and having Alexander-Arnold running up the flank so much, it created a bit of space for Willian to break sometimes. But that you got to take the rustle with the smooth. I think Jamie Carragher said after the game, one of the most important things about this Liverpool team is they don't panic when it's 0-0 anymore.
Why would you when you have Mohamed Salah who can shoot the way he shoots?
Well, these days, yeah. I mean, after this game, yeah, definitely. I agree. But I think that they're combining that lack of panic with this bold style, and it's working really well for them.
So here's where I want to get into maybe not controversy, but maybe will annoy Liverpool fans. But I want to go to some of the talking points from this one. For the first goal, Maurizio Sarri in the post-match interview was he did the classic manager I don't want to get fined thing of saying I don't want to speculate on it, but it wasn't a foul, but I shouldn't say anything. But from the bench, we definitely didn't think, or we thought it was a foul rather. And he was angry because he says that Emerson was fouled by Mohamed Salah when that ball goes to Firmino in the lead up to the goal. Ryan, have you watched this replay? What do you make of Maurizio Sarri's declarations?
I think if that was a foul, we should just stop playing this game altogether, frankly. This is a contact sport, isn't it? From my perspective, Salah goes for the ball, he wins the ball, and he happens to physically contact Emerson on the way through the ball. For me, nothing about that says it's a foul.
See, this is where
that's Emerson not being strong on the ball for me.
See, this is where I'm a little conflicted because I think you're absolutely right. I think and this is maybe a things can be two things sort of moment, but it is Emerson definitely sort of going into it in a way less dedicated fashion than Mohamed Salah, but it does look like Salah kicks Emerson's foot and that's what hits the ball. And so that's where I kind of get caught up in the but is he then playing the ball or is he hitting the man who then plays the ball? And then it kind of goes back to, but is he making a legitimate play on the ball and Emerson just sort of is there but not actually being aggressive enough for what the game would require? And that's where it gets a little bit confusing for me. So I think in the end it probably comes down to whatever the official called is the right decision.
Tay, it's confusing because you're overthinking it, dear. He's the forward in the box. The onus is not for him to foul a defender. It's for him to put contact on the ball. That's what he's doing.
All right. So then are you saying that he does get the ball first and then makes contact? Or are you saying that he makes contact and then gets the ball, but the contact doesn't matter because he's playing the ball?
The latter. I don't think it's even relevant if he does catch him because he's going for the ball.
All right. So that was one moment. The other one that I think a lot of people focused on was the Mohamed Salah dive or dive in quotes, depending on how you want to look at it in the first half. Much debate about this one. Where are you on this one? Was this a dive or was there contact on the shin? Or maybe was it both?
Herein ends my defense of Mo Salah because that was a big old dive for me. It made me think. And I think I saw this as a question raised on Twitter. Is there a player who dives more and gets punished less? And the only player I can think of is maybe Harry Kane, who doesn't have a reputation as a diver, whereas Salah tends to have a reputation for it. But are you gonna say there was a foul there?
I wouldn't say there was a foul, and I certainly wouldn't go as hardcore as some Liverpool fans have gone of saying he definitely kicks him in the shin and that's what makes it go down. I think that David Luiz is reckless and goes across very aggressively, and then I think definitely maybe there's a little bit of contact on Mohamed Salah's shin based on the angle. That's the confusing thing is from behind the goal it looks like maybe he kicks him in the shin, from another angle it looks like maybe he doesn't, and so I think what happens there is Mohamed Salah feels the contact, is a smart enough player to gauge how reckless Luiz was in coming in so aggressively, and I think kind of puts two and two together and goes to ground. So I think there is contact. I think
but hang on, what those sentences you just said are describing a dive.
Yeah, I mean, see, that's the thing. It's so that's, again, where maybe I'm overanalyzing here. But I feel like there can be contact, so it's not complete simulation for me, but then there's also the idea of a player can then make a meal of that contact, and I think that is what Mohamed Salah does. So I think that's why where people were really frustrated, I saw some people frustrated that Salah wasn't booked or that there isn't going to be sort of retroactive punishment, and I think that's probably why there won't be and why he wasn't booked is because I think there was a little bit of contact. Maybe the referee saw that contact. I'm inclined to say he did and thought, yeah, there's a little bit of contact. He went down. It's definitely not a penalty, but maybe it's not enough for a bookable offense.
Yeah, somewhere in that grey area. I think you're probably right. I think the referee made the right call, basically, in that situation.
All right, so it sounds like right now you're saying, where are we on the Salah dive controversy meter then? Are you saying it is controversial, or are you saying it's not as controversial?
It's a hard five. It's right in the middle for me.
All right, it's right in the middle right now. Okay, so that's our first. That's the first moment of controversy we're going to go with.
This is how we've set the bar now. We've set the meter.
Okay, the meter's at a 5. Okay. One more question for you about these two teams. There's been much speculation. Do you think there's a decent chance that we see both Manchester City and Liverpool win their remaining Premier League fixtures, and it just kind of comes down to who scores more goals by the end of the season?
I think that could happen, yes. When you look at, so let's look at the fixture runnings we got. We've got City have got Tottenham at home coming up. That's a tricky one. Then they've got the United, the Manchester derby away. That's a tricky one. Then they've got Burnley, Leicester, and Brighton. All three pretty winnable. I still think that City can win all of those games reasonably easily. And I'm not going to let that Tottenham loss in the Champions League block the copybook in any way, because I think I mentioned last week, that's the kind of game that Pep can afford to lose and still take it back to the Etihad and win that second leg. So I still think City can very much win all those games. And then you look at Liverpool's fixtures. Cardiff away, yeah, sure. Although Cardiff, they're going to be really needing the points at that point. Huddersfield, yeah. Newcastle away, sure. Wolves at home on the last day. Are Wolves going to be playing for potential spot in the Everton Trophy there at the end of the season? So
the Everton Trophy.
But I think they can definitely win all those fixtures too. So the answer to the question is yes. But then you look at the streaks they've both been on, and you look at City. What is it? 22 out of last 24 games they've won, and Liverpool are on a massive winning streak as well. Statistically, you'd say no, they're not going to do it. But then you look at the results on paper, the fixtures on paper, and I think yes.
I mean, I think I would agree with your summation of Liverpool, especially given the Wolves dropping points to Southampton this weekend. I think that puts them in a position where maybe they're not going to be as aggressively challenging for a European spot. Or they still may well be, but I think that losing points already is definitely going to hurt them. I would say maybe this is wishful thinking from me, given my loyalties, but I do think that game against United for Man City will be more challenging. United have not been in the best run of form. I don't think that's going to change this week, but I think they will definitely be up for that. That said, I don't know. I think people have asked Gary Neville before who he would rather win the title, Man City or Liverpool, and I think he says without question Man City. So
of course.
I don't know if there will be as much motivation as there would be if that were Liverpool, that they had a chance of derailing.
It's a tricky question because you ask the players on the pitch of the United players, they're going to want to win that, and obviously it's important in the top four race to get a result there. But then, of course, it is the process of beating City in that game and effectively handing the title to Liverpool is a tough pill to swallow for all people involved in that club. How do you feel about that?
I would rather Man City win it again. Is about where I am. I mean, inevitably Liverpool will have to win. Right now, Daryl rolls his eyes whenever I go into this, but there is something about the having one more title that does still give me a little bit of a thing to feel happy about. But I have so many friends who are Liverpool fans. I have a few friends who are Man City fans.
Humble brag, so many friends.
It's really 6 friends. It's really 6 friends.
Calm down.
I have 6 friends who are big Liverpool fans. And so I would like them to be happy, but I would also be happy if they were unhappy. So I'm okay with Man City finishing on top. We will see how that plays out. We'll also see how it plays out in the top part of another English league. But before we get to that conversation, we should probably talk about today's sponsor, Greats. I am wearing Greats right now. Greats are high quality, classically styled shoes for both men and women that are made the best for less. And I would agree with that because I've talked about this before. I'm wearing the high top Royales right now. They are made of all leather and they still smell like brand new shoes, which I know is a weird thing to talk about how your feet smell, but it is kind of mind blowing to me that I've been wearing these shoes for the better part of a year. They still look and feel brand new.
That's weird. Let's not talk about the smell of your feet anymore, please.
All right, let's not do that. Instead, let's just talk about what Greats are. Ryan, I'm not sure if you're as familiar with Greats because I'm not sure we've done an advertisement for them while you've been on the show, and I don't know if you've kind of encountered them previously. So I'm going to assume you kind of checked them out today. What were your impressions of Greats and their shoes?
I'm not just saying this because it's a very positive impression. I actually have 2 pairs of Greats in my cart right now.
What have you gone for?
The Royale, the Blancos, and the Neros. Because you got the Blancos. I'm a very much a white sneaker guy. I have been for many, many years, and they're the perfect shoe for me. And the black ones, I feel like I could wear those in a more formal setting. I'm thinking Jamie Redknapp wearing his suit on Sky Sports would wear a pair of those.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I will also say that I had the Royales in white, and they lasted way longer than my wife's pair of shoes that she bought at the same time from a different shoe company that were also white. And I think it's because of the quality of the leather. They stay white longer. Definitely, you still got to put in a little bit of maintenance to make sure they stay as white as you would like. Because suddenly, if you're wearing the dingy white shoes, it doesn't quite have that same pop that you would want from a studio televised broadcast, which I guess is what you're looking for. And I would say, I'm going to go the opposite way, though. The ones that caught my eye today were the Courts. They're inspired by vintage basketball shoes. I like the black leather and black suede combo.
Nice.
Those might be the ones that I would go for. But if our listeners wanted to check out the new offerings from Greats and their classics as well, they can go to greats.com and use the code TSS for 15% off. Once again, that's greats.com, and the code is TSS for 15% off. Thank you very much to Greats for sponsoring today's episode. Remember, these are premium quality sneakers at a fair price.
And remember, if you can wear them for a year long and you won't have bad smelling feet, in effect, you can have Royales without cheesy feet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, baby, I did it.
That is impressive. That is impressive. And I will give you credit. Unfortunately for you, I am not the one who laughs at puns. If Daryl were here, he would be laughing uproariously. And I will share that with him later, and I guarantee you he will laugh. But until that happens, I instead want to talk about the championship, if that works for you. It's a league we haven't talked about very much. Both you and I and Daryl and I have not talked about it very much.
The what? What is it called? What's it called again?
Oh, gosh. What am I supposed to call it? The English League Championship? What would you prefer?
No, sorry, I've been in America for 8 years. I didn't know that Americans knew what this thing was. It's called the Championship. It's the league below the Premier League.
See, I thought you were messing with me. I was like, oh, am I supposed to do like the proper title with a sponsor in there?
I'm messing with you in a different way.
That's fair. That's fair. And it is always hilarious to me that you have the Premier League, the Championship, and League One. Like, everybody wants to be competing for that top spot, apparently, when it comes to how regal sounding their name is. But yes, there is that other league. Top two teams go up automatically. Then you've got the playoffs for teams finishing 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. Ryan, I don't know how much you've paid attention to the Championship this season, but what do you make of the table right now with 4 games remaining? We've got Norwich on top, Leeds in second, whole bunch of teams still eligible for the playoffs.
Yeah, it's about how I thought it would shape up. I'm quite interested in the bottom of the table. Ipswich went down at the weekend, and it's quite interesting how Ipswich and Norwich, their local rivals, are at opposite ends of the table at the moment. Norwich looking very likely to go up automatically, topping the table at the moment. And I follow the Championship in part because my best friend is a Millwall fan, and don't worry, he's a non-violent Millwall fan, so you're fine.
Is there such a thing?
There is such a thing. He's a pacifist Millwall fan, which sounds like a contradiction in terms, but there you go. And they had a big drama this weekend. They scored a 95th minute equaliser at Sheffield United, which worked out very nicely for Leeds, obviously, because they're in second place. Sheffield United are in third. So Millwall inadvertently affecting the title race. Sorry, not the promotion race, I should say, and also saving their bacon because it gave them an extra point. They're now 2 points above the relegation zone. But I want to see Sheffield United do well, mainly because of Sean Bean. Their biggest fan. He's got a Sheffield United tattoo that he has to cover up for filming. And I don't know if you or any of the listeners have ever seen a movie called When Saturday Comes. Are you aware of When Saturday Comes?
I am familiar with it, have never seen it. And I'm only familiar with it because I think I saw somebody tweet the VHS logo of it last week maybe.
So when I was younger, they used to show it on TV every week, basically, because it was a British film, but there weren't many of them back then.
What is it?
Well, basically, Sean Bean, the world's biggest Sheffield United fan, stars as a Sheffield United striker who basically has to fire the team to glory, and that's what he does. That's basically the crux of the movie. But it doesn't age tremendously well, but it's still a wonderful watch. I recommend it more than any of the Goals or Soccer Dog movies, if that's a good endorsement.
First of all, I think it is. I'm going to assume it's better than Mean Machine starring Vinnie Jones, so that rockets it up to the top of the British movies about soccer. But yeah. I would also say it's probably a rarity in that I'm going to assume, unless there's a tragic turnaround in the final game, that it's one of the few movies that Sean Bean actually survives all the way through.
Spoiler alert, dude! Come on.
I mean, he dies in literally every movie. It's kind of insane how often Sean Bean dies. It's one of his traits. I didn't
even think of that, but you're right. He does.
I mean, you go through the list. Very few does he end up making it all the way through.
That reminds me. I'm going to slightly non sequitur here, but I interviewed Clive Owen once back in the day, and I asked him a question because I was working when I worked for a men's magazine called FHM, and it was bandied around in the office that he is the best actor at dying on screen. I think it was based on The Bourne Identity that this thing came up, and I put the question to him, and I thought it was this is quite an interesting question. You know, he's going to like this, and he appreciates the theatrics that I'm crediting him with being a good dyer on screen. A dyer was a terrible use of English. A good having good on-screen deaths, I should say. And he was thoroughly unimpressed with that and most of my questions.
Isn't that the worst? I hate when that happens, when you're like, oh, I've got this question. It's going to get this conversation flowing. This person's going to love it. And you ask it, and they're like, I don't know. That's a weird question to ask. And you're like, okay.
It was because, to be fair, Mike, I was working for a magazine which was a bit zany. And I think I just asked him what the biggest dog he'd ever seen was before that.
Okay, yeah, that's on you. Never mind. Never mind. I take it back. Clive Owen is justified. Is he as handsome as I imagine he would be in person?
He's very handsome, but
Okay.
I was probably conducting his 40th interview today. He was very weary by that point.
That makes sense. Oh, yeah, they do have to do that whole, like, the press gauntlet. That sounds miserable. So instead, let's talk about some of the teams that are in the the promotion race. If you had to pick some teams to go up, Ryan, so I think you mentioned Sheffield earlier. You want Sean Bean to be happy. I genuinely thought you meant a player on Sheffield for a moment named Sean Bean before I realized what was happening.
He wants to be.
Would they be one of the 3 teams that you want to go up?
I'd like to. I mean, the team I'd like to go up the most is Bristol City because obviously they're the only team in that list who've never been in the Premier League in the top 6 right now. So that me being always my default setting is to cheer for the underdog. Bristol City is who I want to go up. But I mean, on form, it's Aston Villa at the moment. I think they've won 5 in a row and doing incredibly well. And they've got kind of more of a squad that might be able to survive in the Premier League, if that makes sense.
We're talking about Villa?
Yeah,
I would agree. I think they've got a few, like Tammy Abraham on loan has been performing very well. I'm guessing they would try very hard to sign him if they were to go up. Jack Grealish in there as well. And I think they've got like enough of the kind of like toughness that you need when you're that promoted team combined with a little bit of the flair. I contrast them with their like West Midlands rivals, or I guess Wolves' West Midlands rivals. I think that's how it works. I do not want West Brom to go up. I was looking at their roster, and it is the most yo-yo roster I think I've ever seen.
Isn't it a lot of loan players? Villa have got loan players. Is Twanzebe on loan at Villa? I think, but West Brom. I've got the squad in front of me, but haven't they got a bunch of loan players?
I'm sure they do, but they've also got players like Wes Houlihan, Hal Robson-Kanu, Dwight Gale, Gareth Barry, Jefferson Montero, Kieran Gibbs. It is so many players that you're like, oh yeah, they were good there. Oh yeah, they used to play for that team. Oh yeah. But it's a lot of the sort of, to your point about like wanting Bristol City to go up because it would be something different. West Brom would be like the most like, okay, yeah, they're back. Got it. Cool. I know exactly what to expect from them. So I would not be as excited to see West Brom back in the Premier League.
Yeah, I get that. But I think all of these playoff teams we're talking about here, it's all teams who would be delighted to go up, but then they're going to have 38 miserable games next year.
Yep, pretty much. What about the 2 currently in the automatic places? Like if we want to keep the Game of Thrones sort of interwoven narrative going, there was the great video, even though I'm not a big Leeds fan, but there was the great video of Nikolai Coster-Waldau, I think is how you pronounce his name. Jamie Lannister would be the easiest way to put it. Getting an entire crowd of Jimmy Kimmel, or an audience of Jimmy Kimmel to chant "In Bielsa We Trust." That's not a thing I think most people ever expected to see.
Nope, I did not expect to see that. I was delighted that I did see that, but it also made me think they can get an audience to chant anything. If like Sacha Baron Cohen had gone on and got them to chant something really offensive they didn't realise, they don't know who Marcelo Bielsa is, do they?
I mean, that's the premise to like most
they know
of his
nothing
movies.
of his work of sitting on buckets shouting at people.
And spying on people. I think Leeds are definitely a team that I like for the history of Leeds and like the kind of long-standing rivalry of them and Manchester United. I would like to have them back in the Premier League, but to have Marcelo Bielsa managing in the Premier League, I want that. I want to see it happen. Let's make it happen. And then I want Norwich to go just because I don't have as much rooting interest in Norwich. I have another friend who's a Norwich fan, humble brag again. But the one that I really want to see is Teemu Pukki, who I know very little about aside from the fact that I want a Finnish striker who's scoring goals all over the place. 27 goals in 42 games. I think the most of anyone in the championship, and none of them are penalties, which is always impressive. He scored the late equalizer this weekend against Wigan that got Norwich a point to keep them 4 points ahead of Leeds. So I'm okay with the top 2 both going up. And then I think if I had to pick a third, I would go Villa right now, though you've made a compelling case for newbies Bristol City to be in there.
Yeah, I too am interested in Pukki, by the way, seeing what he can do in the Premier League should he make it that far. It strikes me as one of those cases. I think we've seen this with maybe perhaps some Brighton players in the past and that kind of ilk of player where they'll absolutely boss it in the Championship and then it could end up being like how Ricky Van Wolfswinkel was for Norwich back in the Premier League days. It could end up being that kind of doesn't make an impact at all kind of situation.
Gosh.
So we'll see.
I forget the kid's name. He was a Chelsea loanee who destroyed the Championship. He was in our scouting network, and Daryl was so hyped on him for so long. And I think maybe Patrick Bamford is his name. And I think we were so sure that he was going to destroy the Premier League. And instead, I think he's maybe played 2 games and maybe scored 1 goal. I might have those numbers wrong, but it's not great. So, yeah, I take your point. Teemu Pukki could be a one-season wonder, but I like the idea of having a Finnish Teemu. I think because I like Teemu Selanne, the hockey player, when I was younger. So I just want another good Teemu in my life, and I would be okay with that.
There's some puns to be made with that name as well, isn't there? I'm sure.
I mean, that does not interest me. My anti-pun stance is well established and on record, but I'm sure
Why
Daryl
do you hate
Grove
fun so much? What is it with you?
See, here's the thing. Daryl and I had this serious conversation because I just don't like puns are things that I'm like, yeah, okay, I recognize why that was clever, but rarely has there been a pun that made me like really burst out laughing. And maybe that's just because I'm just no fun. I could just be a stick in the mud, and maybe that's indicative of my sense of humor. But yeah, that's what it is for me with puns. It's just like at most, I will sort of like acknowledge the humor of it, and then on a podcast, it doesn't really come across if I'm like, ha, yes, well done. Like that just sounds like I hate puns versus it's just more so being like, yeah, okay, I understand the amusing nature of that comment.
I'll withdraw my hilarious Royale with cheese comment from the ad read earlier. Then.
That was solid. That was solid wordplay. I'll give you a solid wordplay. I just don't laugh out loud at them. That's my level. One thing I did enjoy laughing about. This is a story I have not told you yet. It relates to AC Milan and Lazio. We've got a few things to talk about there. Despite being sick, I had committed to running a 10K with my wife this weekend. Ran that with her, and then my wife's brother's wife, so my sister-in-law, she and her family always do this like post 10K drinks and food, and they kind of do a pub crawl. And we joined with that. And my sister-in-law's father and his brother are both police officers, both of whom like aggressively do not like soccer. So I was watching the Man United game, and the Dortmund game was on another TV in this one bar, and they kind of kept giving me stick about liking soccer and who could possibly root for soccer. And I looked at her dad and realized that he was wearing an AC Milan shirt. And it was one of my favorite moments of the entire weekend was just being like, you're wearing a Milan shirt right now. And he thought it was for the city. And so I enjoyed to no end that he could no longer mock soccer for the entire weekend because he was de facto supporting AC Milan.
That's insane. He thought it was a shirt promoting the city itself.
I think his daughters had brought it back from him when they were like on vacation in Italy, and so he just assumed it was like promoting Milan, the city.
So they knew this person who is outwardly anti-soccer. They thought they'd troll him by buying him a soccer shirt.
I hope that's what it was, and it worked effectively, and it allowed me to enjoy that moment, even though I was like anxiously biting my nails because Man United were trying their best not to win yet again. But we're not going to talk about them. We're going to talk about Milan Lazio. Not as much about the game. I wanted to talk about some of the situations off the field, or I guess on the field, but off the field after the game. There was a kind of fracas at the end. Lazio thought they should have been given a penalty. Penalty was not awarded. There was some pushing and shoving. I first wanted to ask you about a quote from Gennaro Gattuso, the Milan manager. He said of the kind of incident, I even gave myself a thigh strain running over to calm everyone down. I was on the bench. I saw some words were flying between the sets of players. The important thing is that it ends there. When I was a player, this sort of thing fired me up, but now I see it with different eyes, and I'm too old for that. Plus, if I launch a slap, I'm very likely to get one back, and they've all been to the gym more than me. Here's my question for you. Do you believe Gattuso? Because I feel like he would still be very much up for a scrap if the situation presented itself.
Yeah, I think he would be. And basically, he did go in and pile on. So, I mean, why is he saying I wouldn't do that when he basically did do that?
I was sort of trying to figure those two things out. I was like, you were in there. You sprinted onto the field. So basically all you're saying is that you would get involved, but maybe not be the agitator who started the violence. Got it. Cool. So I'm glad that you agree with me that Gennaro Gattuso would definitely still be up for some violence if the situation presented itself. But the other incident I wanted to ask you about from this one was after the match, Timu Bakayoko and Franck Kessié holding up the jersey of Francesco Acerbi, I think is how you pronounce that. That got a lot of headlines, and I'm not entirely sure why. So, Ryan, can you talk us through that one? Or if not, can you just tell us where does that rank on your controversy meter for the weekend? So we had Mohamed Salah's dive at a 5. Where's this one for you?
It ranks higher on my confusion meter.
Okay, thank you.
Obviously a former Milan player for a little while, and there was some banter back and forth between Bakayoko and him online earlier in the week. And why did he give him the shirt? It was like kind of a peacemaking gesture. What was I don't understand how this was set up in the first place.
See, I guess that's where none of this really seems that dramatic for me. I think it's a lot in the way the story is told because it was basically Acerbi. I think he made some comments about how like the Lazio squad were like technically better than AC Milan, that maybe like AC Milan players wouldn't get into the Lazio squad. And then, I think Bakayoko responded like, "We'll see this weekend." That's basically the kind of gist of the controversy. After much was made of that, it got picked up as like, "Ooh, they don't like each other." So then I think the jersey swap was supposed to be I think Acerbi was the one who kind of initiated it, and it was supposed to be a peacemaking gesture. So then Bakayoko and Kessié hold up the jersey to the Milan fans, and that gets represented as the two of them disrespecting Acerbi, which that's where it sort of comes, like the narrative gets confusing for me, because that to me just looks like they're holding up a jersey and kind of laughing a little bit, but it didn't feel like they were like stamping on it or disrespecting it in any way. But now I think there's talk of them being fined, possibly being suspended. The league's going to look into it. I think the Italian FA president came out and said it was disgraceful. It all feels very dramatic for a very minor incident, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think it deserves as big a headlines as it's getting, maybe. At best, I think maybe it was misjudged. But I can see how it looks, because it looks kind of, to go back to Game of Thrones, it looks like the proverbial head on a pike celebrating the kill.
All right,
kind of
that
thing,
that makes more sense to me. Okay, so then, if we have Salah as a 5, where are you putting this one? Are you putting it above Salah or below Salah?
6.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Just because it's already generated some fuss, I'd say. And I think it's a silly thing to do. But also, it's a good solid 8 on the confusionometer.
A good solid 8 on the confusionometer. I appreciate that very much.
Which goes up to 19, by the way, because it's confusing.
The confusionometer goes to a 19. That is the perfect number for the confusion scale to go to. I really appreciate that. I do want to ask you one more kind of like speculative random question. I was watching this game. I was watching Piontek once again look very good, be involved in lots of different ways for Milan. And it did make me wonder, if and when Chelsea panic this summer, if they have this final window before the transfer ban comes into effect and they decide to spend too much on players, how much do you think they're going to offer AC Milan for Piontek?
All of the monies. I think they've shown that they do like to buy players from Serie A, and it's worked out the past few times wonderfully, hasn't it? Oh, wait. No, hasn't, has it?
But this does feel like a familiar sequence for them of like young Italian player, moves to a bigger club, starts having success or continues to have success, I guess is the case, top scorer for both teams, and now maybe Chelsea come in with a bid. It's just like watching him play, I was like, oh, they're definitely going to bid for him, and I don't know why. The only other time I've had this feeling was when I like watched Daley Blind do a jersey unveiling, and I was like, I feel like United are going to bid for him, and that happened. So I'm 1 for 1. We'll see how it plays out this summer.
Yeah, I think that's a very likely thing. As we mentioned earlier in the show, Chelsea very much have a striker problem, and they have a striker here who's going to likely be top scorer in Serie A. So why not watch him fail miserably in the Premier League? Yeah. I think this was an interesting game, by the way. I think the Gazzetta dello Sport called it the 50 million euro match, which is a bold thing to do when there's quite a few matches left in the season. Obviously, Lazio could have leapfrogged over Milan into the top 4 with a win in this one. Milan were in patchy form. I think they hadn't won their previous 4 games before this one. A really big 3 points this was for Milan. I think there'll be a lot of relief, the kind of relief that you can let off steam by showing off a rival's jersey at the end of the show and having a little punch up too. Wonderful.
Well, at least the drama will subside and they don't have to play each other again. Just kidding. They're playing each other in 9 days. The second leg of the Coppa Italia, I believe semi-final. The first one finishing 0-0 in Rome. So this will be once again in Milan. We'll see how that one goes. I actually don't have much else I want to like really in depth or like get into in terms of European action, because though there were some surprising results this weekend, I think you can put them within the context of the Champions League is ongoing, and I think some teams care about it more than some of the league games they're playing this weekend. So with that in mind, I wanted to look ahead a little bit to the Champions League on Tuesday and Wednesday, and to do so, we should talk about today's sponsor, BR Live, because BR Live is the soccer pass. It's the only way to see all UEFA Champions League and Europa League games, plus UEFA Youth League games and the Scottish Premier League. You can get individual passes to pick and choose which matches you want, but for purposes of the remaining Champions League fixtures, you probably want to see them all. This week, the games on TNT is Barcelona-Manchester United. That's Tuesday at 3 p.m., much to the chagrin of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, which means the other Tuesday game, Juventus hosting Ajax, that one 1-1 on aggregate, is available on BR Live. That's the only way our listeners will be able to see that one, and anyone else in the United States for that matter. And then Wednesday, 3 p.m. on TNT is Man City-Tottenham. Obviously, Tottenham hoping to see that one out. Man City hoping for the opposite, which means the BR Live game will be Porto v Liverpool. Liverpool with a 2-0 home win heading into the second leg. That one, again, only available on BR Live. So if you want to watch Juve and Ajax or Porto v Liverpool, BR Live is the only way to go.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to this weekend, this week of games in the Champions League. I mean, I'm going to be watching, I'll say I'm going to be watching the Juventus Ajax game on Tuesday. I'm assuming you're going to be watching the other one because it's really evenly poised, that Juventus game, isn't it? It should be very interesting. Ajax going to Juventus Stadium where, not many people come away with a win. And I think that's going to be an absolute cracker, and that one's available on the BR Live app, of course.
It sure is. And Juve would be one of those teams I mentioned. They did lose 2-1 away at Spal, I guess.
Spal.
But they rested, amongst others, Szczesny, Pjanic, Ronaldo, Bonucci, Khedira, Alexandro. So definitely not their first team squad out there. Definitely.
It's almost as if they've taken the foot off the accelerator pedal a little bit in Serie A there, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. It feels like they could. PSG maybe don't have that excuse losing this weekend, but Juve certainly do. Barcelona as well, drawing 0-0 with Huesca, but again, resting pretty much every starter. Reports today that they are planning to start a front three of Dembele, Suarez, and Messi. That makes me slightly nervous as a Manchester United fan. Ryan, what are your expectations for that game, Barcelona v Man United, on TNT at 3 p.m.?
I'm expecting many comments about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at the Camp Nou, because that's going to be the big narrative there.
Yes, of course.
But I'm also expecting Barcelona to have very little problems getting past this Manchester United side. I apologise. I'm sorry, Tete. I'm sorry.
You don't need to apologise for reality. That's fine. You're not Thanos. You can't really change things like that. So I think it's acceptable to say things are the way they are. But yeah, I would expect I don't even know what I would expect from Manchester United. I would assume a sort of counter approach to this one, or like a bunker and counter attack, and hope to catch Barcelona out, maybe frustrate a little bit. For Barcelona, I think, given that the pressure is not necessarily on them, I think they will definitely find their way through. I definitely can't see United holding them goalless. So if United do want to advance, they're going to need at least a couple goals. The same, I guess, could be said of our other two games on Wednesday. Man City hosting Tottenham. City down 1-0, obviously, from the first leg. Ryan, I'm going to guess that you're feeling confident based on the predictions you've made previously about this one.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think City got to be very careful not to concede early, because then it's really pressure is on them to get 3 goals, wouldn't they, if Tottenham score? I do think they're going to turn it around. I think they can easily. That first leg aside, they've had little trouble getting past Spurs in the past few meetings. I think they're going to have a much stronger lineup. Pep will do less of a head-scratching starting 11, I think, in this one. Obviously, this should be the priority. I think this should be the priority over the Premier League, of course, as well. Although maybe it's not necessarily in Pep's head, but it should be. This is Man City. I'm going to say a 3-1 win for City.
All right. Tottenham fans do not like that prediction, so they can email Ryan Bailey for his blasphemy if you're a Tottenham fan. Then the other one to mention here would be Porto against Liverpool. Porto played basically their best possible 11 this weekend because they are currently second. I think they're same level of points, but plus 11 goal difference behind Benfica. But they kind of played their standard 4-4-2 with a lot more of the starters. Pepe in there, Hector Herrera was in there. So I would say that's probably the same rough formation and personnel that they're going to deploy against Liverpool, who then, as we've talked about, also had to play most of their starters in that game against Chelsea. So both teams kind of evenly matched in terms of having a little bit of fatigue heading into the second leg.
Yeah, definitely. Liverpool did play a Chelsea side who are worse away from home than Tiger Woods. Boom, boom. Thank you very much. Tying it back to the weekend's events. I don't think Liverpool will have too much trouble getting through this one. I think it's the semi-final where they're going to hit a wall in this one.
All right. But if you wanted to check out Porto trying to come from behind to knock Liverpool out, or Liverpool holding on if you're a Liverpool fan, same for Juventus v Ajax. Those games, again, only available via BR Live. BR Live Soccer Pass is the only way to see UEFA Champions League and Europa League, as well as the Scottish Premier League and Timothy Weah doing Timothy Weah things. So thank you.
Can we do a disclaimer there, Tate? You don't have to watch the Scottish Premier League on BR if you don't want to. No one's going to make you do it, okay? You don't have to do it.
You don't have to. You're not forced to.
No. No.
But
you can watch other stuff on there.
You can if you so choose. I appreciate the anti-Scottish Premier League.
By the way,
bias.
one of the best things about BR Live is that they do have lots of other sporting events. And speaking of the golf from the past weekend, the last thing I watched on there that was non-soccer was the Tiger against Phil Mickelson thing they did a few months ago. That was really good. That was really well covered on the app as well. So I recommend it for other sports too. Check them out. Apart from the Scottish Premier League, you don't need to watch that.
And that's golf, right?
Golf, yes, the one with the sticks.
All right, cool. The one with the sticks. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Well, yes. So, again, Juve Ajax on Tuesday, Porto v Liverpool on Wednesday. Both of those on the BR Live app, available on brlive.com as well. Thank you to BR Live for sponsoring today's episode. Ryan Bailey, one more place to head, and it's America, because I wanted to talk about a couple things. Well, I guess actually we can stay in Europe because it involves an American. In Europe, it's Jesse Marsch getting the RB Salzburg gig. That was announced today. Good timing for us in terms of our recording schedule. I wouldn't ask are you surprised, because that felt like a logical move. Instead, I'll ask this: again, I know you're not you have the English accent, which usually indicates that you are not born in the United States.
Correct.
Do you have an interest in how Jesse Marsch does with a team that will likely be in the Champions League, and thus I think will be the first American to coach in the Champions League?
Yeah, very interested, particularly picking up RB Salzburg, who are a very good team in the context of Austrian soccer. You know, they're running away with the Austrian Bundesliga. And they've won their last 6 games. I was just checking up on them. I didn't know that off the top of my head, I must admit. But, they're obviously a very good organization who's, as you say, likely to be in the Champions League, and their coach is going off to Borussia Mönchengladbach, Marco Rose, who sounds a lot like Marco Reus when I say it. It's not. And so I think it will be very interesting. And I'm always interested to see how Americans do in Europe. So all the best to him. And I hope that the way he's being moved around the Red Bull organization, he's not going to be in charge of testing the drinks in 2 years' time or anything. Stick with the soccer.
Let's hope not, unless things go horribly, horribly wrong. It's the strange thing about this is a strong thing for an American coach, but it's also a weird thing to be rooting for a large corporation and their structure, because it is going from New York to Leipzig, now to Salzburg. You can see the progression. You can see how they're sort of grooming him for the next steps. I would venture to guess that if this goes well at Salzburg, eventually there's an eye towards him maybe taking over at Leipzig or whatever large club they inevitably buy next. So I think it's a strangely very exciting thing, while at the same time it does make me slightly apprehensive for the future of soccer and everyone being kind of affiliated with different conglomerates. Yeah,
definitely. But I mean, to bring it back to Marsch, I think full credit to him. He's obviously doing something right. He's obviously done something right with Leipzig, and obviously, his record speaks for itself when he was at Red Bull. A 50% win ratio. I looked it up this morning. I didn't realize it was that high. That's really good. So I've good luck to him, and he's going to have a taste being in East Germany of maybe a little bit of the culture that's going to be going on there. So it will remains to be seen how he does that. I'd be very interested to follow that.
He's learned how to say Prost or however you're supposed to say it properly, so that you can participate in Oktoberfest and blend right in. So I'm sure he'll do very well there. But yeah, I'm really excited to see how he builds out a squad. If he kind of continues to use the same sort of high pressure systems that he's used in the past, that Leipzig tend to use, we shall see next season. But for now, let's just continue to root for Leipzig, and let's talk a little Major League Soccer, shall we? I wanted to start with a quick one. Minnesota opening their new stadium with a 3-3 draw against NYCFC. Have you had a moment to look at Sean Johnson's howler for Minnesota's third?
Yeah, he won't enjoy how many times I have looked at it, unfortunately.
Do you have any idea what happened there?
Is it just a case he just wasn't looking at the ball? I mean, you look at Rodriguez, the player, the New York City player coming on, pressuring him. He's a good 10 yards away. Mm-hmm. And it's not a terrible back pass. Nope. It's a quietly, nicely paced back pass. He could easily just cloud that away. He doesn't need to take a touch. But I mean, he's trying to put it on his right foot, I suppose. Fails miserably. And I feel sorry for him, because, nobody wants that kind of thing. But
yeah. No, I mean, I was looking for maybe there's a little bounce, or maybe it just had hit a divot or something like that. Yeah, I think it is just, maybe it's something could be so routine that you're already thinking about your like third or fourth step down the line and not necessarily focused on making that first step. Commiserations to him, but congratulations to Minnesota United opening the new stadium. It looked lovely. They did a ton of work to get it ready. I enjoyed all the different clips they put out of like people walking around breaking the ice off of the seats and all the work that was being done to get the snow off of the grass. I don't know what they have done to make it that the grass is still alive and looks as good as it does, given that it was under several feet of snow and then had heavy equipment on it. But they did it, and it looks very nice.
It does look very nice. It looks like a lovely stadium. As you say, it's snow covered, but you wouldn't know it from looking at the field. Very, very good quality field. Mm-hmm. Although, their keeper might not feel that same way.
Yeah, maybe not. And then the other one, other game I wanted to talk about from this weekend was Sporting KC 2, New York Red Bulls 2. I feel like people have seen this one coming. We'll start with the positive first. Gianluca Busio, 16 years old, scores the equalizer, third goal in 3 games. Not a bad way to start your Major League Soccer career, your professional career at that. And it's one of those things though, Ryan, where like he's scoring goals, and it's not like he's like this one was he was like right place, takes it well. Don't get me wrong, it's not like he dribbled the entire team and scored a screamer, but it is still just that sort of moment of like, yeah, it was a good goal, and then you remember like, oh yeah, when I was 16, I was not doing that, and it sort of puts it in perspective.
I mean, he also doesn't look like a 16-year-old. The way he carries himself in his frame, I think you wouldn't know it unless you were told it, basically, and certainly from the maturity of performance as well, getting that goal and a little bit later after that, and very nearly setting up a goal with kind of a back heel where he ended up on his butt on the grass, but it was a nice little pass to almost set up a winner late in that game. So yeah, full credit to him. Very good.
All right, so well done to Gianluca Busio. Definitely not well done to Kaku, who is the other major talking point coming out of Major League Soccer this weekend. Near the end of the game, I forget who it is from New York Red Bulls who's trying to play a pass into him. I think Kaku wants to counterattack. It seems like maybe the counterattack is on. The pass doesn't quite get to him. Instead, it goes out of bounds. And in his frustration, Kaku decides to kick the ball as hard as he can into the stands, hits a fan in the face. I believe the fan, various reports of he was bleeding from the nose, bleeding from the mouth, had a concussion, had other issues relating to the kick. And I'm guessing we're going to see a massive suspension, maybe a fine for Kaku. Right? Like, was this as shocking to you as it was to me? And I hesitate to say shocking, but it's not. It's like we've seen Eric Cantona go in the stands in the past. We've seen Lionel Messi do something very similar against Real Madrid in 2011. Ball's going out of bounds, he kicks it into the stands. The difference there, I guess, like not saying I'm letting Messi off the hook or anything, but that's like Madrid fans, antagonistic, ball is still in play. You can at least kind of understand what happened. Here, it just felt like Kaku really couldn't contain his emotions and kicked the ball as hard as he could. Maybe was trying to hit it into like the advertisements instead of into the crowd, but failed. And maybe that in and of itself is a problem because then he's not even hitting the target.
Yeah, I think definitely really, really stupid behavior from him there. I think he deserves a big fine. I think he deserves a long ban. But in his credit, maybe not necessarily credit, but to track back from that a little bit, he seemed repentant almost straight away, had the shirt over his face and sort of looked disgraced as he walked off the field. He sent several apology tweets since. So it's not quite like it was just a very small red mist that descended over him, I'd say. So we can give him that. And also, maybe controversially, I'll say, I don't think he was the worst number 10 on the field in that game because Crozet, who why is he wearing number 10 as a fullback? I didn't like that anyway. But he's basically at fault for both goals. The offside trap was completely destroyed for the equalising goal because he was casually jogging, playing him onside. I think maybe that's directly affected by the fact he was wearing number 10 on his shirt, and that's what you get because, you shouldn't be doing that. And also, the 2-1 goal, the diving header, it looked like it was Crozet who'd lost his man as well. So I think
I agree.
Not a good day for number 10s at that stadium, definitely. But just to add to the story here of kicking a ball into the fan's face, I may have told this story before. Forgive me if I have. But I went to a game at Craven Cottage in the late 90s, Wimbledon against Fulham, and I'll always remember this. It was before the game. And the Wimbledon players were warming up, taking shots at goal. And Mick Harford, he's manager of Luton at the moment, who are doing very well. They're going to go up to the Championship this season. one of the hardest players you'll ever have. And this is at a time when we also had Vinnie Jones on the side as well. So there's context there. He's blasting shots at the goal. One of them, he blasts wide of the goal and it goes into the stands. This is back when Craig Cottage was all standing behind the goal. And it's quite empty at this point. It's quite a long time before kickoff. And there's a guy, I'm watching the whole thing happen. There's a guy holding like a tray of coffees, walking down the steps, and the ball hits him square in the face. And I can remember it as if it happened this morning. The sight of his glasses splitting in several different directions. He hits the deck, the coffees go everywhere. Some other players are jumping over to see if he's okay, like there's medical attention being paid to him. Mick Harford just carries on taking shots. Just doesn't. It was a DGAF moment, and it was, and I think that's a direct opposite here to what the repentance we've seen on the field here, the Kaku repentance that we've seen. So I'll give him credit for that.
I won't give him as much credit as you will, because I think here's the way. Like, I watched this a bunch because I was trying to figure out, like, is he just like a psychopath who does not feel emotion? Because it's a problem of optics, because I think what happens is I think he is trying to hit the advertisements. I think he misses and launches it into the stands. And so when the referee comes over, when everyone gets in his face, I think, I'm not justifying it, but I think he is sort of like, no, like, I wasn't, why are you guys so upset? I was just like frustrated. And then I think when the red card comes out, I think he's he's kind of embarrassed by what he's done because he missed the advertisements, but is also now, like, I think only dawning on him. And I think that's where the optics are so bad, because the sort of smile when the red card comes out and the initial smile when he walks away is what the cameras will focus on. And it makes it look like
embarrassment, though. That's an embarrassment smile for me.
That's what it is for you, because that's what I was going back to, is like, is it embarrassment or is it him like gloating? And I think I'm inclined to agree with you that I think it's embarrassment. It doesn't justify his action. Certainly it doesn't let him off the hook. I think he's going to get as close to the maximum ban we've ever seen, which I think was 10 games. I think he'll probably get something in like the range of 6 to 8 and a big fine as well. But yeah, I think this is one where, like, the outrageometer was so high that I did expect it to be a little bit more Cantona-esque. And when I watched it, it was definitely not good, certainly, and I think he's going to definitely bear the brunt of the punishment. But it wasn't quite as outrageous as maybe some of the reaction made it seem.
I mean, it's pretty outrageous when you look at it in isolation that he blasted the ball at a fan's face from point blank range. Yeah, but I think there is a lot of context around it. There's no way he was intending to do that. I think, as you say, he was intending to hit the advertising hoarding, and the smile, I do interpret that as he's embarrassed and he doesn't know how to behave at that point, because you'd have to be pretty evil to think it was funny to have done that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. Unless he does, like, hate playing in New York that much, wants to go to Club America and, like, does not care. And in which case, again, we go back to there's a little bit of Queen Cersei about him, as opposed to any sort of, like, misunderstood moment there. But either way, yeah.
Well, he did try and force that transfer. It might be easier to push that through now. You never know.
I would venture to guess it will be, because Red Bulls fans not pleased at all. The Red Bulls teammates went over and I think apologized to the gentleman after the game. Yeah. Luis Robles did not cover himself in glory. I think he said, like, that's what happens in an apologetic tweet. I think ended with, but that's what happens when you sit in the front row. That didn't go over well. I think New York Red Bulls.
No, that's not what should happen.
Yeah,
that should not be your expectation to go to a game. I'm sorry.
I would agree with that. So I think I'm going to say, for me, that's near the top of the controversy rankings for the weekend. Would you put that one ahead of the Acerbi jersey incident?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay. We're striking up 8 or 9 on the dial on that one.
Okay, all right. So we're at Kaku, Acerbi, Salah in that order for controversies of the weekend.
And then Tyrion being killed in the first episode.
Of course. Yeah, that's in there certainly too. That's in there certainly too. All right, Ryan. Well, I really appreciate you taking all the time, as ever, to watch all these games, talk about all these games, and, talk some Game of Thrones in there as well.
Tay, my absolute pleasure.